Welcome back. We are back again, reading Surviving Sydney Cove, the diary of Elizabeth Harvey. Let's continue. Wednesday, 5th of May. Last night, Winston turned up, saying he had 2 days leave and would spend them with his family. We sat around the fire, the surgeon smoking his pipe, Emily resting on her pallet. Soon, the sun fell into the horizon. Winston asked for more of my story. "Indeed, Lizzie, you must," said my master. "It does my children good to hear how others manage their misfortunes." Winston is so prickly he took immediate offence. "Papa, you think I do not know?" My master merely smiled and shook his head. He took a stick from the fire to light his pipe and puffed on it. One of his stockings, the toe has vanished completely, must be patched. First, I settled myself to my sewing. Then I began by telling them how I had left all Mama's and Papa's possessions with Aunt Flossie, who was to be your new Mama. "Edward, should this journal reach you, please make sure that our aunt returns Mama's 4 chairs, 2 beds, and our table. Also, many of the kitchen pots, pans, mugs, and plates belong to us, as do our Plough House almost new bridle. Do not forget to take the 2 milking buckets, Papa's spades, hatchet, wheelbarrow, cart, and grindstone, and Mama's spinning wheel. Now, Edward, I do not know what has happened to our parents' house, nor the land that Papa ploughed. Before I left for London, I made our uncle promise not to let anyone else move in. But 4 years later, perhaps he has forgotten. Like our Papa and his Papa before him, you are now that farm's tenant, and the land is yours to work." I told the Russells how I had journeyed to London with my few clothes, 6 shillings in my pocket, and a small packet of bread and meat. It took the chase nearly a week to arrive. Then the streets seemed filled with so many drunken folk and beggars. I was fearful to dismount, and very sorry I had ever left home. My new mistress had sent a man to bring me to her house. He led me through a warren of lanes and alleyways, all made dark and filthy with soot and animal droppings. There was so much noise from carriages rolling past and street peddlers, I was sure that if I had stayed, I would very shortly become deaf. Winston's cough was disbelieving. "Truly that bad?" "Truly that bad," I said indignantly. How can Winston question me when I know that he has never been to London? Even at night, the streets wear a pall of smoke from too many coal fires. Only the main streets are lit by oil lamps. The streets have so much refuse and so many open sewers, a person could die from the stench. I had to hold my nose so I could manage to arrive at my new mistress's house without vomiting. I paused for breath. In the silence, I noticed the wind had dropped. I said, "Did I tell you that I was apprenticed to a milliner?" Winston cleared his throat. "That you did." I glanced around the room. Emily had fallen asleep. How much of my story had she heard? The surgeon puffed his pipe and sat behind a fugue of smoke. The fire cast strange shadows outside the window. The southern sky was ablaze with stars. Mistress Mary Clark, I went on, hated to spend a penny, if ever a farthing would do. She used her apprentices as domestics, as well as seamstresses. I slept on a narrow mattress in the attic. This bed I shared with Nancy Park, the other apprentice. 2 girls and 1 bed, said my master. From what I saw in London, I was lucky to have even that, I replied. He puffed on his pipe and motioned for me to continue. We rose at dawn, worked hard all day, and did not see our bed until late at night. For this, we were even given a little bread, and sometimes a mutton chop. "What must you do in exchange?" Winston asked. I glanced up from my sewing. His gaze was fixed on the fire. Right now, Mistress Clark's house felt like a very bad dream, from which I had thankfully woken. I explained how I had to empty the slops into the street and the fireplaces of ashes. I fetched water, laundered clothes, dusted, swept, and helped the cook prepare my mistress's dinner. Between those tasks, I learned how to cut, shape, sew, and iron various fabrics. Then I would carry the finished bonnet to whoever had ordered it. This way I saw much of the city. Winston said, "What did you think of London town?" I paused to think. A bigger place of contrasts would be hard to find. Gentlefolk wear coats and dresses made of fine silk and satines. Their powdered wigs are so high they make the wearer seem twice as tall. Once they are clad in their best, they walk London's great streets and squares and meet in the pleasure gardens of Ranelagh and Foxhill. "So much for the rich," he said. "And the poor?" "Why, they lived in a wilderness where there is always the threat of death from gangs of ruffians and general lawlessness. The poor only stop themselves from cutting their own throats by drinking too much gin. Surely the runners keep this in check." I shook my head. "The runners are only permitted to carry lanterns and wooden batons. They are poorly paid. To survive, they must take bribes. Thieving is so common, it is whispered that the king himself was robbed while walking in his garden to Kensington." That has long been coffee-house gossip," the surgeon butted in, "and hardly worth repeating." A log slipped out of the fire. He carefully replaced it. Then he said, "Tell us more about your work." I looked up from my stitching and said, "I was quick to learn, and my mistress was pleased with me. As time went on, she found more and more for me to do." Winston said, Why did not the other apprentice take her share?" I picked up another stocking and leaned towards the fire for more light to thread my needle. Her sewing was not as skillful, and she was lazy. From certain looks she sent me, I soon learned that it was not beyond her to hate her fellow servants, and it did not take long before her hatred took solid form. At this, my master roused himself with a start. He patted my shoulder somewhat awkwardly, then decided that it must be bedtime. "Lizzie, you will tell us more tomorrow." Winston helped me lay the pallets on the floor, and we settled down to sleep. Soon, my master's snores rang through the hut, but I was so tired, nothing short of a tempest at sea would have kept me awake. Thursday, 6th of May. This morning, I laundered Emily's linen in lye and hot water. Her clothes are so worn, I fear that with another washing, they will shred too far to patch. While I worked, I let my mind wander over all that has happened to me. Relating my stories brings up so many memories. Many are so horrid. I wish I could forget them. But when Emily asked me what my parents looked like, I found that I could hardly remember. Lately, Mama's face has become so confused with Sarah's, and Papa begins to look like Henry Dodd, and sometimes Surgeon Russell. Edward, how different it would have been if we were rich. Wealthy folk hire artists to paint them so they cannot forget what their loved ones look like. I remember our mama telling me that when Lady Granger was young, she was so beautiful, artists clamoured to paint her portrait. The surgeon wears a locket on his heart. Inside the locket is a miniature of Mary Russell, his dead wife. When he showed it to me, I examined her very carefully. Her hair was yellow and she had blue eyes, pink cheeks, and a mole on her left cheek. Her children looked like her, in that both are fair-skinned and delicately built. My eyes are sore and I am very tired. Enough writing for tonight.